In Great Britain, the criticism of Equality Minister Kemi Badenoch and Minister for Women Liz Truss is increasing. Several government advisors resigned last week because they no longer give Badenoch and Truss any credibility in dealing with LGBTIQ issues. According to one of the advisors, Jane Ozanne, the ministers would create an environment hostile to LGBTIQ. Among other things, they demand the abolition of so-called conversion therapy, in which various measures are used to attempt to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. Ozanne, together with around 20 British LGBTIQ organizations, wrote a joint letter to Badenoch on Wednesday, criticizing the minister's failure to respond to the demands. 1,000 days have passed since the government's last vow, according to the joint letter. A spokesman for the British government assured after the resignations that the government had committed itself to creating a country in which every person, regardless of sexuality, race or religion, was free to live the life of their choice. Measures to end conversion therapy in the UK are ready and will be released soon. A collection of over 250,000 signatures for the abolition of conversion therapy received cross-party approval on Monday. Even Prime Minister Boris Johnson described the method as a deterrent in July last year. It's not the first criticism of Johnson's ministerial equality team. A month ago, Conservative Minority Advisor Samuel Kasumu announced a government report with alternative facts on racism in Britain. The Minister Badenoch, who's also in charge, was also heavily criticized a few weeks ago after he talked about a young black journalist on social media. Truss was also criticized in December for claiming that equality debates were more fashionable rather than factual. Truss also criticized what she believed to be a dominance of non-representative voices for whom group membership was more important than individual character. Critic Ozanne claims that Badenoch and Truss do not understand LGBTIQ people. What we see instead is a Trumpian approach by the Tory government, which right-wing Christian missionary groups and all those who want to turn back time listened. And now, just before the NATO summit, the British government presented ambitious new guidelines for its foreign and security policy. Already now there is a potential for conflict with the alliance partners. A Global Britain is the title of the new guidelines for the foreign and security policy of the government of the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and a new operations centre is just one of many announcements that are formulated therein. Great Britain's ambitions under the government of Prime Minister Boris Johnson are high. The foreign policy positioning after Brexit is self-confident, and the USA are explicitly named as the most important partner. There is even said to be a situation center, modeled on the Situation Center from the White House, which British newspapers reported widely. The Daily Mail, for example, immediately provided a sketch of where Johnson should sit, where the ministers could sit. A long table, screens, no windows, everything safe, everything secret. It's no coincidence that the arrangement is reminiscent of the famous photo from 2011, on which the then US President Barack Obama and his deputy Joe Biden followed the access to Osama bin Laden with military and Secret Service employees. Great Britain sees itself on the side of the USA, and that also means a clear commitment to NATO. Defense spending is expected to remain at 2.2% of annual economic output. In other words, above the value that the NATO member states have defined as the target for spending, and from which Germany, for example, is still a long way off. Additional funds are to be used to modernize the British armed forces, fewer tanks, fewer personnel, more cyber defense, and modern weapon system. There is no debate about the ability of drones to be armed in Great Britain. It has long been decided to purchase them under the name of loyal wingmen for the Royal Air Force. The British government has also announced that it will renew its nuclear arsenal. 4 new submarines, which can be equipped with nuclear missiles, are to replace the older fleet. One thing should always be on the go. A reduction in the number of nuclear warheads has been withdrawn, and in future the upper limit will be 260 instead of the previous 225 warheads. Peace researchers see this as a dangerous armament. The Johnson administration argues that technological change has long since begun and that other states have integrated modern, novel weapon systems into the armed forces. The guidelines also state that as long as nuclear weapons existed, NATO will remain a nuclear alliance. The United Kingdom is renewing the principle of nuclear deterrence, to which the German government has so far been struggling. At the presentation of the guidelines in the House of Commons last week, Johnson highlighted Great Britain's commitment to NATO, and the UK leads a battle group, a multinational task force in Estonia, as part of NATO's strategy of deterring Russian expansion efforts in the Baltic region and assuring support for NATO members in the region. Johnson writes about investments in defense in the foreword to the guidelines. This makes it clear to our partners in Europe and elsewhere that they can always rely on the UK when it matters. It should be a little bit more difficult when dealing with China. Johnson calls China a difficult partner, but emphasizes the country's great importance as a trading partner. Foreign Minister Dominic Raab made it clear to employees at an internal meeting that if Great Britain applies its own human rights standards for future trading partners, there will be few arrangements with emerging ones left, so there's not much left. The relevant passage had been leaked and had caused quite a stir in the British news media. The Labour Party accused Johnson of desperation of having to conclude trade agreements with as many states as possible. Whether the UK can be a power for good, as Foreign Minister Raab publicly put it when presenting the guidelines, is still unclear. In China politics, there are currently indications that the USA, Great Britain and the EU are pulling together. The EU foreign ministers have decided to take measures against China's leadership because of the human rights violations in the Xinjiang region. Great Britain has now also followed this step. Raab has already announced appropriate sanctions. How Great Britain wants to promote trade with China and at the same time pursue a value-based foreign policy has not yet been determined, but could already cause differences between the NATO partners overall. And this is a very difficult topic, of course. The EU is still trading with China. China is an important trading partner, but there is a sanctions regime now that applies to everyone. The EU recently made a big update there, and there is this sanction regime, and with clear steps. Of course, the 27 always have to agree, but it is there, and that's quite a progress, I must say. And human rights and trade are always like a dance on a very thin line. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.